These are the questions for a feel for art. Question 1. What does the word techniques mean in paragraph 8? Pieces, samples, tasks, ways. Pause and answer. 2. How does Mr. Hager teach her students about texture? She demonstrates the process of creating texture. She displays the tools needed to create texture. She shows art pieces that use texture. She posts the definition of texture. Pause and answer. 3. Which of the following is not a technique used to create texture? Painting with oils, painting with sponges, painting with a rolled rag, painting crisscross designs with brushes. Pause and answer. 4. Why did the author include the photograph of Vincent van Gogh's wheat field with crows? It allows the reader to see an example of art that does not use texture. It allows the reader to see an art piece that uses texture. It allows the reader to see the type of art Mrs. Hager expects of her students. It allows the reader to see Jason's art piece. Pause and answer. 5. What technique is described in paragraph 12? Dripping paint from a brush, rubbing pastels on paper, rolling paint with a cloth, pressing paint with a sponge. Pause and answer. 6. Which sentence from A Feel with Art best shows that Jason listens carefully during the lesson of texture? The students followed her direction. Mrs. Hager responded, "That's a great definition of texture." After working in art class for 2 weeks, the students showed their products to the class. I used the crisscross design on the water plants. Pause and answer. 7. The reader can tell that Mrs. Hager is strict with her art students, an art expert, talented using art techniques, concerned about her students using art tools. Pause and answer. 8. What does Mrs. Hager mean when she says Jason may be the next Van Gogh? Jason might be an art teacher. Jason might be a famous artist. Jason might teach next week's art lesson. Jason might teach the class about texture in art. Pause and answer. The suffix "or" in the word creator in paragraph 11 causes the word to refer to a canvas, a person, a skill, an object. Pause and answer. 10. Look at the diagram below. Mrs. Hager teaches the students the meaning of texture. Mrs. Hager shows examples of the art pieces. Mrs. Hager gives students an assignment, blank. Which sentence best completes the diagram? Mrs. Hager asks Jason to explain his use of texture in his art. Mrs. Hager demonstrates how to apply paint to a canvas. Mrs. Hager asks Matt to share his art piece. Mrs. Hager invites Vincent van Gogh to speak in her art class. Pause and answer. 11. Read the sentence from paragraph 16. I rolled the rag onto the canvas to make the water look like clouds moving in the sky. This language in this sentence most appeals to the reader's sense of taste, smell, sight, touch. Pause and answer. 12. Why does Mrs. Hager choose Jason to share his art piece? Because he knows the definition of texture? Because he is the first student to complete his art piece? Because he creates the best art piece? Because he uses several techniques to create his art piece? Pause and answer.